The snow fell silently against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the penthouse, each flake a whisper of the holiday warmth that seemed to exist everywhere except within these walls. Victoria Chen stood motionless, her reflection ghostly in the glass, watching the city below transform into a winter wonderland, while she remained suspended above it all, untouched and untouchable. At 42, she had built an empire that bore her name, commanded boardrooms with a single glance, and accumulated wealth that most could only dream of. Yet on this Christmas Eve, the silence in her luxury apartment was so profound it felt like drowning. If this story touches your heart, please hit the like button, drop a comment below sharing your thoughts, and subscribe to Kindness Pulse for more inspiring stories that remind us what truly matters in life. Victoria had not always been this way. There was a time when she laughed freely, when relationships meant more than networking opportunities, when Christmas was about connection rather than another day marked on an empty calendar. But the climb to the top had required sacrifices, and she had made them all without hesitation. Friendships faded when she couldn't make time for coffee dates. Her family grew distant after years of missed gatherings and phone calls cut short by urgent business matters. She told herself it was worth it, that success was its own reward, that she didn't need anyone. But tonight, surrounded by designer furniture and abstract art, the lie felt suffocating. The building's lobby was deserted when she decided to venture out, unable to bear another moment alone with her thoughts. The streets were quieter than usual, most people tucked away in warm homes with loved ones, sharing meals and memories and the simple joy of being together. Victoria walked without destination, her cashmere coat doing little to shield her from the cold that seemed to emanate from within her own chest. The decorated storefronts and twinkling lights felt like mockery, celebrations of a life she had traded away for conference calls and corner offices. She found herself outside a small 24-hour diner, the kind of place she would normally never notice. Through the foggy window, she could see it was nearly empty except for a few stragglers seeking refuge from the cold, or their own loneliness. Something about the warm glow from inside pulled at her, and before she could talk herself out of it, Victoria pushed through the door. The bell above chimed cheerfully, and the scent of coffee and cinnamon rolls enveloped her like an unexpected embrace. The waitress who approached her looked to be in her late 20s, with kind eyes and a name tag that read, Maya. There was something about her presence that felt genuine, unpolished in a way that Victoria had forgotten existed. Maya's smile was warm despite the late hour, despite having to work on Christmas Eve. When she asked Victoria what she'd like, there was real interest in her voice, not the transactional politeness Victoria was accustomed to from people who wanted something from her. Victoria ordered coffee, her voice sounding strange to her own ears. Maya returned with a steaming mug and, unprompted, a slice of apple pie. On the house, she said with a wink. Nobody should be alone on Christmas Eve without at least a little something sweet. The simple kindness of the gesture hit Victoria with unexpected force, and she felt her carefully constructed walls beginning to crack. They began to talk, tentatively at first, then with increasing openness. Maya shared that she was working double shifts to save for nursing school, that her family was across the country, and she couldn't afford to visit this year. Victoria found herself speaking truths she hadn't admitted to anyone. She talked about the emptiness of success without someone to share it with, about how she had become so focused on reaching the top that she forgot to look around at what she was leaving behind. As the hours passed and the conversation deepened, something shifted in Victoria. Maya didn't judge her choices or offer easy platitudes. She simply listened, really listened in a way that Victoria couldn't remember experiencing in years. When Maya's shift ended at 2 a.m, she did something that surprised them both. She looked at Victoria with those kind, knowing eyes and asked, I know this might sound strange, but I have a small apartment just a few blocks from here. I was going to watch old Christmas movies and maybe bake some cookies. Can you stay for just one night? Nobody should be alone on Christmas. Victoria's first instinct was to decline, to retreat back to the safety of her isolated tower. But something in Maya's invitation reached past all her defenses, touched a part of her she thought had died from neglect. It wasn't pity in Maya's eyes, but recognition. One lonely soul reaching out to another, offering the simplest and most profound gift of all. Presence, connection, the acknowledgement that we all need someone. She said yes. Maya's apartment was tiny, probably smaller than Victoria's walk-in closet, but it radiated more warmth than the penthouse ever had. They baked cookies from a mix, burning the first batch while laughing so hard Maya snorted coffee through her nose. They watched a scratchy DVD of It's a Wonderful Life, and when George Bailey realized the impact his life had on others, Victoria found tears streaming down her face for the first time in years. Maya held her hand without saying a word, understanding that sometimes the greatest comfort is simply being there. Before we finish this beautiful story, if you've been touched by Victoria and Maya's connection, please take a moment to like this video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to Kindness Pulse. When Victoria finally returned to her penthouse on Christmas afternoon, something fundamental had changed within her. The silence no longer felt oppressive, but rather like space waiting to be filled. She picked up her phone and began making calls. To her sister, who she hadn't spoken to in 2 years. To her college roommate who had stopped reaching out. Some didn't answer, but some responded with surprised joy, and Victoria realized that perhaps not all bridges were as burned as she had feared. Victoria never forgot the Christmas Eve or the young waitress who saw past the expensive clothes and cold exterior to the lonely human underneath. She began volunteering at soup kitchens, not as a corporate publicity stunt, but genuinely. She restructured her schedule to include time for the people who mattered, discovering that success means nothing if you have no one to celebrate it with. She and Maya remained friends, their unlikely connection transforming into something beautiful and lasting. The greatest lesson Victoria learned that night was one that would reshape everything. We are not meant to journey through life alone, and having everything means nothing without someone to share it with. Sometimes the most valuable gift we can give or receive is simply showing up, being present, extending an invitation to connection even when it feels risky. Maya had asked a stranger to stay for just one night, and in doing so, she had given Victoria back her humanity. True wealth isn't measured in bank accounts or corner offices, but in the relationships we nurture, the lives we touch, the moments we choose connection over convenience. Sometimes all it takes is one person willing to ask, "Can you stay?" and another brave enough to say yes.